Let me begin by thanking my friend, Governor Corbett. You know, my family and I feel blessed to call the governor's residence in Harrisburg home. I know that Governor Corbett and Susan, well, I know they uniquely appreciate what an honor it is to be able to live there, not only as governor, but with your family, with your children, with your grandchildren, and of course with your dogs. I believe as governors, we have a responsibility to take up the baton from those who came before us and carry it forward, to run a few more miles, to make our mark, and to leave this place we love just a little bit better than the way we found it. To further William Penn's vision from the 1680s that this, Pennsylvania, would be a place that would be warm and welcoming to all people, grounded in the freedom of religious expression, grounded in the freedom of speech. A place that no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love or who you pray to, a place that you can call home. The governor's residence in Harrisburg is a physical embodiment of that commitment to carry on the legacy of this great Commonwealth and to move us forward. But on the night of April 13th, that governor's residence came under attack, as did our family. I woke up to a bang on the door. It was a state trooper telling us that there was a fire and we needed to evacuate immediately. Lori and I got up, grabbed our children, our dogs, our cousins, and all the nieces and nephews who were there and made our way out to safety. We ran out of the home as first responders ran in. Just hours before, we had gathered in the state dining room for our Seder to celebrate the first night of Passover in the very room that the arsonist broke into and set on fire. It was there that he launched Molotov cocktails and made his way through the governor's residence wielding a metal hammer that he later confessed he was going to use to kill me when he found me. Not only was my safety threatened, but my wife, our children, members of our extended family were all at risk. I thank God every day that we were able to evacuate safely, that no one was physically injured, or worse yet, killed, that all the staff who worked at the residence, the brave police and firefighters and first responders who ran toward danger were okay. But understand, that doesn't mean that the attack hasn't left emotional scars. I can attest to that, especially as a father to 4 children, knowing that my life choices put them at risk. Violence in all forms is unacceptable. And political violence is particularly dangerous. Not only does it seek to injure, maim, or kill, it seeks to intimidate and terrorize and silence. I'm here today to tell you that I will not be deterred in my work on behalf of the good people of Pennsylvania, and I sure as heck will not be silenced. But understand that political violence doesn't only affect those who are directly targeted or their loved ones. It affects all of us. It tears at the fabric of American society and the fundamental principles that this nation was founded upon. A nation where civil disagreements should be welcome, because we know that discourse can lead to progress. That is how we perfect our union. And that is what we've done over the last 2.5 centuries. We understand that when you hear speech you disagree with, the answer to that is more speech, not violence. Our democracy, well, it is stronger when more Americans participate in it and can make their voices heard. But unfortunately, political violence and the hate that fuels it has become far too common in our society. Think of it. In just the last year or so, we saw it in a field in Butler, Pennsylvania with the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. We saw it on the streets of New York City with the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, the suspect captured in Altoona, Pennsylvania. We saw it in the middle of the night in suburban Minnesota when an assassin took the life of Melissa Hortman, the former Speaker of their state house, and her husband, Mark. And yes, we saw it last week in Utah with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Different places, different people, different perspectives, but one common thread: people using violence to settle political differences. Hear me on this. Leaders have a responsibility to speak and act with moral. And as I have made clear, each and every time, this type of violence has no place in our society, regardless of what motivates it or who pulls the trigger, who throws the Molotov cocktail, or who wields the weapon. It doesn't matter if it's coming from one side or from the other, directed at one party or another, one person or another. It is all wrong, and it makes us all less safe. During moments like this, I believe we have a responsibility to be clear and unequivocal in calling out all forms of political violence and making clear it is all wrong. That shouldn't be hard to do. Unfortunately, some, from the dark corners of the internet all the way to the Oval Office, want to cherry pick which instances of political violence they want to condemn. Listen, doing that only further divides us, and it makes it harder to heal. There are some who will hear that selective condemnation and take it as a permission slip to commit more violence, so long as it suits their narrative or only targets the other side. Sadly, we've even seen some on the internet openly celebrate political violence or issue calls for revenge in the wake of it. Giving violence a pass or justifying it or looking the other way, it only deepens the divide. Let me be clear, violence is never okay, regardless of the motivation. Violence is never the answer. And we cannot allow violence to be used as a pretext for more violence. We must reject the rhetoric of vengeance and instead focus, as you are today, on the work of healing. We need to create more opportunities for peaceful and respectful dialogue, respecting each other's fundamental rights as Americans. Censorship, using the long arm of government to silence people, to silence businesses and nonprofits and restrict their right to free speech, well, that will not solve this problem. Prosecuting constitutionally protected speech will only further erode our freedoms and deepen the mistrust. That is un-American. There is a better way. There is a better way. And that better way is the Pennsylvania way. In Pennsylvania, we have shown a path forward. This gathering is an example of that. After the attack on the governor's residence, I want you to know our family was lifted up by the prayers and blessings and messages of support that we received in the wake of that traumatic event. Those prayers wrapped around us and protected us. I am a prayerful person. I pray every day. But I can tell you, I never felt the strength of other people's prayers being put on me until that moment. Every living former governor and first family reached out to express their horror, to check in on us, to pray for us, and to ask what they could do for us. So my wife, Lori, our First Lady, and I invited them to the residence to rededicate ourselves to upholding our Commonwealth's foundational values and to pledge our shared commitment to the residence's future as a place of community and as a place of resilience. Governors Wolf and Corbett, Rendell, Schweiker, and Ridge, they were all there with our former First Ladies, as were members of the Thornburg and Casey families. You know who else was there? Laura Ellsworth was there, the co-founder of this summit. She asked me that evening to be here with all of you today, and I'm grateful for this invitation to speak to you, and I'm thankful to her for her strength and her leadership. More than a half of century of Pennsylvania leadership was represented in that photo you saw earlier, was represented on that day. They are Democrats and they are Republicans, leaders of different generations and from different parts of our Commonwealth. But they were united in speaking and acting with moral clarity, making clear that hatred and violence has no place here in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania leaders from different parties speaking with one voice to reject the dark cycle of violence and instead bring light. We'll never know, but perhaps the words they shared, the mere fact that they gathered together, stopped other hate-filled or hate-inspired actions and brought down the temperature of a nervous Commonwealth. In the words of William Penn, we were an example to the nations, one that I think would make William Penn quite proud. But it's not just former governors or first families who showed us the way. It was the people of Pennsylvania who did that work. I want to share one such story with all of you. After the attack, our children wanted to do something for the firefighters who rushed in toward danger as we left towards safety. They wanted to make them a meal and be able to thank them for what they did. We served lunch to the firefighters from Harrisburg Fire Company and the area companies that responded to try and make sure we were safe. And after we served them lunch and made a point to shake the hands of each of the firefighters and get to know them, an elderly man named John Wordle, an 82-year-old Christian chaplain from the North Penn Township Fire Department, came up to Lori and me and gave us a letter signed by each member of their department. He then asked me to turn the letter over, this beautifully typewritten letter signed by every member of the fire department. He asked me to turn it over, and I did. And on the back was his handwriting. And he said to me that he wrote a prayer that was most important to him in his life on the back and wanted me to have it. It's from the book of Numbers, chapter 6. The Lord bless you and keep you, he wrote. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. I wept when I read that prayer that he wrote. I called Lori over, and we embraced this 82-year-old chaplain. It was a prayer, of course, of comfort, a prayer to make sure that we are watched over by God, and a prayer known to me as the priestly blessing. What you may not know, and what Chaplain Wordle certainly did not know, is that it's also the prayer I recite over our 4 children nightly. Simech Elohim k'Ephraim v'hi Menashe, v'rech Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. I put my hands on my children's head when I say that each night. Those are words of healing, and they're words of hopefulness to me. And they are also words that again remind us of our shared humanity. Chaplain Wordle and I could not be more different in life. Different generations, different walks of life. Heck, we probably vote for different people come election time. Yet we were bound by that same portion of Scripture, a portion of hopefulness and healing and protection. It's a recognition that there is more that binds us together than divides us as Americans, no matter what those who stoke division would want to have us believe. Words are important, but we also need action, and I know you know that. It's one of the principal reasons why you're here today. We need to make sure people are safe here in Pennsylvania and all across America, safe to exercise their fundamental rights and freedoms, whether they're debating on a college campus, praying at a synagogue or church, or spending time at home with loved ones. We've done a lot of that work in my administration, helping fund more than 1,500 more police officers across our Commonwealth, driving out $15 million to churches and synagogues and mosques and other nonprofits to keep them and their members safe. Hiring more cops and strengthening our buildings, it helps, but it's not the whole solution. We have to do more. We need to address the hate that is spreading online and give our children the tools to be able to address it. I want you to know as parents, this is especially important to Lori and me. In fact, Lori had the idea of asking the Pennsylvania Department of Education to create a digital literacy toolkit that teachers and parents can use to help our children navigate online. I don't care whether our kids take a position on the political left or on the political right, but I do care that they're able to discern fact from fiction online. But despite that meaningful progress that we are making here in Pennsylvania, there's a deeper issue at the root of this dangerous rise of political violence. Too many people don't believe that our institutions and the people in them can solve problems anymore. They feel alone, ignored, shut out by a government that isn't working for them. This is particularly true of younger Americans. They feel unseen. They feel unheard. They feel unheard in the halls of government. They feel unheard in our elections, in the media, in our nonprofits, our businesses, and within the law. Frustrated by a lack of progress and consumed by this feeling of hopelessness, they find refuge, often in the dark corners of the internet where righteous frustration is taken advantage of and used to foment hate. It leads to a belief among some that the only way they can address their problems is through violence. They find online those who glorify violence and urge it on. What starts with cowardice keystrokes too often ends up with a trigger being pulled in our communities. That is dangerous for our democracy, and we need to turn the tide. This conference helps. The work you do matters. I so appreciate people like Laura and my friend Chancellor Mark Nordenberg, who do this work not just during a conference, but every single day of the year. I think it is also in those governmental institutions, well, that people feel that they are being responded to, that their real problems and their real frustrations are being addressed, and that they see a government that is working to solve the real challenges that they face. As leaders in this Commonwealth and across the country, I think we need to listen more, and we need to act faster. We must get stuff done and restore people's faith that government can be a force for good in their lives. That's what we're trying to do here in Pennsylvania. Let me just give you a few concrete examples. Follow me on this. We're processing permits and licenses faster than ever before. We're getting people answers quicker. We're making historic investments in education. We're delivering free breakfast so kids don't have to learn on empty stomachs, delivering mental health supports for our school children. We're giving kids access to VOTEC classes at a rate never seen before. We're creating economic opportunity on our main streets all the way out to our farmlands. We're building a government that works for Pennsylvanians and gets stuff done. I think this is part of the critical work we need to do right now to show that it can work. Now listen, I realize getting your permit isn't going to end violence, but hear me on this. Maybe, just maybe, for the one time that person, that small business owner, that individual needs their government, that one time, they get an answer, and it's quick, and it's what they were looking for, and they walk away from that experience with just a little more faith that the system is there for them, that the system's not trying to hold them down, but actually is there to work for them. I think that's part of helping turn this tide, of repairing our institutions and showing that they can still work, that we can still get stuff done here in America. We can do big things. We can solve people's problems. We have to get stuff done. We have to be able to see our common humanity. We have to reject the forces that are trying to pull us apart in person and online. We need to get back to something that I learned right here in Pittsburgh, at the corner of Forbes and Murray, the night after 11 of our precious souls were taken from us while they prayed on Shabbat morning. When I joined hundreds of you and our neighbors coming together in that light, cool mist of that October evening, holding hands, locking arms, singing and praying together, comforting one another, declaring that night with one voice that we would not let hate or bigotry or anti-Semitism permeate or further infect this loving community. Jews and Christians, Muslims, black, white, Asian, Latino, we all stood together. We all declared that. A cross-section of the entire community was here, grieving together, but also finding strength in one another. It was the people here on those streets of Pittsburgh who proclaimed that night and continue to proclaim to this day that we are stronger than hate. We are stronger than hate. I believe that that feeling is not something that is reserved to Yinzers or those of us from across Pennsylvania. I believe that in America, we are stronger than hate. But I also believe in America that this work doesn't just fall to others. It falls to each and every one of us. I serve as your governor, and I'm committed to a life of public service because of how my family raised me and what my faith has taught me. My faith has taught me that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. That means that each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, get in the game, and do our part. I know you understand that. I know you feel that as well. One of our former neighbors in this community understood it as well when Fred Rogers once famously said, "Look for the helpers." I look around this room and I see all of you, the ones who show up, the ones who speak up, and the ones who stand up to hate. You are showing all of us here in Pittsburgh, throughout Pennsylvania, and throughout the United States, you are showing us the way. You are those helpers that Mr. Rogers spoke about. And I know that working together, we're going to heal this nation. We're going to heal this world. We're going to address political violence, and I know that brighter days are ahead for our Commonwealth and our country, thanks to all of you. May God bless you, and may God bless this wonderful Commonwealth and country. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.